Okay. Thank you everyone for joining this webinar. I have some housekeeping announcements. The attendees are muted. So please, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them either in the chat or using the Q&A function. We're going to share the recording later and also the presentation. So don't worry if you miss anything. I think I'll start just presenting myself. I'm Stephanie Gaudino, and together with my colleague Fitri Wulandari, we are responsible for the voluntary carbon market analysis here at VITE. And VITE, for those who don't know, we are a global hub for market data analytics and insights for low carbon markets. And we are an independent market intelligence provider. And our vision is to empower decision makers to help them create a net zero society. Our solutions include renewable energy, renewable gas, compliance carbon, and voluntary carbon. So just a quick reminder that all the insightful graphs and everything you see here in this webinar is just a sneak peek of what we have in the platform. So feel free to reach out if you want to know more about us and our platform. I think I'll just go through the agenda of today. So we have the alignment of expectations of what you see. We're going through a quick review of 2023 and what it meant for the voluntary carbon market. Then we're going to do a market analysis on the prices trajectory, the registries overview, issuances and retirements. And then we're going to talk about COP28, its outcomes, and forward-looking, what to expect next. And then we're going through our 2024 outlook. Then we're going to have 15 minutes for a Q&A session. And in the meantime, we're also going to have some polls of questions, so you can share your thoughts with us. 2023 was definitely a year that the VCM hit the spotlight. On the news, on stakeholders meetings, on the governments, during COP. And all started in January, when The Guardian published an article calling red credits worthless. This impacted hugely the prices and kind of set the tone for the year, because a word that can very well describe what happened this year is scrutiny, not only for the credits themselves, but also for the usage of those credits or the claims that companies make. We had also some multi-stakeholder initiatives for the demand and supply of those credits. In March, the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market launched the Core Carbon Principles, which is 10 high-level principles for defining high-integrity carbon credits that encompasses governance, emissions impact, and sustainable development. When this CCP, as they are shortly called, were launched, it was expected that this would boost the confidence in the market and eventually help the VCM to rebound. But what we saw is that the launch did not have an immediate impact in the market, and the prices continue on a downward trajectory, which you're going to see in the price section. In April, the International Civil Aviation Organization granted approval for ACR and ART for CORSIA Phase 1. And that is only 2 standards compared to a lot more that were approved for the pilot phase. So just a quick recap, the CORSIA Phase 1 is the first compliance phase of the aviation scheme. And this approval of only 2 standards for now will affect the supply of credits. And we're going also to talk about that in the Outlook section. But as of now, we only have 2 standards approved and another one waiting, such as VERA, Climate Action Reserve, Global Carbon Council, and Gold Standard. And the feedback is expected by the end of May, when the next technical advisory body meeting is going to happen. Shortly after, in June, we had another development in the market, also from independent initiative, this time for the demand side, that unveiled the claims code of practice, which basically set the standards for how companies could claim the usage of offsets. And this implied an end to the climate neutral claims, much aligned with the Green Claims Directive that the European Commission had launched also in March. In July, the ICVCM again launched a category level assessment framework for their CCPs. And this raised some uncertainties around the approval or not of RED projects. Then later in October, the VCMI launched its carbon integrity claims, the labels silver, gold, and platinum, and also the Scope 3 flexibility claim. In November, Verra unveiled its long-awaited RED methodology, which might have seen as a response to the criticism, but Verra was actually working on that new RED methodology for quite a long time. And in December, among other things that happened, we had COP28. We are going to have a deep dive in the COP28, but on the voluntary carbon market side of things, we had 6 major independent crediting standards declaring their intention to collaborate on VCM integrity, working on common principles for quantifying and accounting for removals and emission reductions. But how does that all impacted the market? Now we will see these dynamics affecting the CBL, future December 22 contracts. And just to recap, we use the contracts as a price benchmark because exchanges guarantee more transparency and liquidity, and they generally respond very quickly to market events. So just as a reminder, we have here 3 contracts. The GEOs baskets, the credits aligned with CORSIA pilot phase. So that means ACR, CAR, and VCS from vintages between 2016 and 2020. The CGO is the CCP aligned credits, but not the ICVCM CCP aligned credits. The CCPs established by the task force on scaling the voluntary carbon market. So we are talking about mainly tech-based projects, renewable energy credits from Verra. And the NGO are the AFLU, afforestation and other land usage credits from Verra, with CCB standards from vintages between 2018 and 2023. So first, we had this big drop here that happened between January and February after the response of the market to the RED criticism. 1 month after that, the Guardian article came out, we saw prices devaluating by 22% on a monthly basis. Soon afterwards, despite the launch of the core carbon principles that softened a bit this curve in decline, the prices continue to fall. This big drop here between April and May was largely result to the fact that ICAO approved only 2 standards for CORSIA pilot phase, ART and ACR. We had a slight uptick in July, triggered by the announcement from the VCMI that while the core carbon principles label credits were not yet available in the market, CORSIA credits for the pilot and first period would be accepted for the platinum, gold, and silver claims. Prices continue to follow a downward trajectory, reaching values below $1 mark. So if you look at the price performance comparing the first trading day of the year, 2023, and the last trading day, we had NGO prices dropping 97%, from more than $6 per ton to only 20 cents. GEOs dropped 83%, from $3.43 to 60 cents. And CGOs dropped from 42%, from a little bit more than $1 to only 64%. We can see here that is clear funnel, right? So this narrowing convergence of prices means that we still have some prices, some baskets of prices being traded at a premium price, but this price differentiation of premium prices for NGO, for example, who used to be the most premium prices, they converge to everything being less than $1 and quite close. The total traded value for the standardized contracts in 2023 was around $208 million. In the over-the-counter prices, it was a whole nother history. We know that the over-the-counter still accounts for the vast majority of the market. We estimate that the whole market is valued more than 1 billion. So that means that the OTC still represents 80% of the market. And despite the prices still declining, we had prices rise for forestry and land use and waste disposal price categories. And that is because of the removals that is here inside of this category, because inside of forestry and land use, we still have afforestation and reforestation that actually rise in price, and improved forest management dropped, while REDD+ remained relatively steadily. That happened because in the over-the-counter transactions, companies still look out for projects with high quality, and they are willing to pay higher prices for what they believe that aligns with their due diligence process. The story goes more or less the same for nature, for different vintages. Here we have the Caatinga Peatland, which was the project that had most retirements in 2023. And although the different vintages dropped in price, we still see here that newer vintages are still being traded at a higher price. And here also that is true for the climate impact X nature prices. But we also see here mirroring the behavior of the other standardized contracts, that is this funnel of price differentiation. When the story is about insurances now, we saw that insurances slightly decline, just under 260 million credits in 2023. That is nearly 10% fewer than in 2022. Vera still accounted for 60% of the total insurances in 2023. And this decrease was largely driven by Vera, because actually Gold Standard and ACR insurances rose in 2023. That happened mainly because Vera, being also in the spotlight and subject to a lot of bad press, so a lot of project developers that had some projects in their pipeline chose to move to other registries as well. And when we segment this a little bit into different project types, we see that renewable energy and forestry and land use contributed the most for the total insurances, just as in 2022, but both of them dropped compared to the previous year. There are some questions whether renewable energy projects do have additionality, and also the concerns about high integrity in the forestry and land use might have caused the insurances to drop, but that will not be so quickly as a market response. And household and community project type, which basically consists of cookstove projects, so an increase in total insurances of over from 7% to 21%. And when we look into the retirements, it's the closest we can get to the demand, to a reflection of the demand in the voluntary carbon market. It's important to highlight, however, that retirements are not a real-time reflection of buyers' preference, since they typically reflect actions or decisions taken years early. And we actually saw increase of retirements in 2023 by 6%, which is basically also, again, driven by Vera, that remains steadily. And while we had gold standard growing by 5%, ACR by 7%, and climate action reserve by 5%. And we saw a record in December. Usually this is the most busy quarter of the year because companies are just running to get things done before the end of the year and closing their sustainable reports. So December set a new record for the voluntary carbon market with retirements at 37 million. Also, again, when we segment here, we can see that forestry and land use projects led in credits retirements. And again, this is mainly because companies are still looking for high integrity forestry and land use projects. Among the most retired projects, we have the Caatinga Petland in Indonesia, Cordillera Azul in Peru, and Rimba Raya in Indonesia. And also, not only looking for high integrity and the co-benefits associated with forestry and land use projects, companies are also looking for SDGs alignment. That's why we also see here an increase of retirements of household and community type of projects. And on the other hand, we had renewable energy projects, which accounted for half of the credits in 2022, dropping by 38% of retirements in 2023. Just like the price differentiation we saw early, firms choose to retire credits that had been generated quite recently. So the vintages is basically when the avoidance or removals took place. And we can see here that companies prefer relatively new vintages from 2020, 2021. And we have here the top 5 companies representing 18% of the overall retirements, adding almost to 30 million tons. The individual company that retired the most credits was the fossil fuel and petrochemical Shell, with 30 million tons through Vera alone, as well as additional retirements and gold standard and ACR. And other firms that offset large volumes of emissions include Volkswagen Group, Audi and Volkswagen, Yamato Transport, pharmaceutical Takeda, and the commercial real estate developer Highland Fairview. I'm just going to give the floor to my colleague Fitri, who is going to talk about COP28.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next slide. Yeah, thank you. So, hi everyone. So now we're going to talk about COP28. First of all, just as an intro on Article 6, since we're going to discuss more about that. So Article 6 is mainly about trading between countries. However, the reason why it matters so much that carbon market stakeholders keep track of its development is because the rules laid out in Article 6 largely determine how carbon transactions work globally, either in regional or domestic carbon markets, also among corporate entities buying carbon credits in the voluntary market. With that said, Article 6.4 within Article 6, being the successor of the Kyoto's Protocol Clean Development Mechanism, was expected to set market norms for the international crediting market. So with regards to Article 6.4, just as a background, prior to COP28, a few weeks before COP started, the Article 6.4 supervisory body already agreed on the methodology and removal recommendations at their 9th meeting. However, during COP28, after 2 weeks of haggling over Article 6, the part of the Paris Agreement governing carbon markets, parties pretty much left COP28 without adopting any text on the issues. The reason being is that, firstly, with the removal guidance, we see that parties request more details on issues related to reversals, safeguards, and human rights. And then we have the methodology text, although we see that it is somewhat agreeable. But since it was pretty much a package deal with removal due to the, nothing is agreed until everything is agreed notion, that it ended up getting rejected as well. In addition to that, we also understand that the main conflict was also between the standards and safeguards proponents, mainly from the EU side, and also allow parties to use whatever they want proponents, mainly from the US side. Now, shifting to the voluntary carbon market, while COBs are not about the VCM, as the voluntary carbon market is neither set up nor governed by the UN, VCM stakeholders and corporate entities, as well as the entire concept of carbon credit trading, were very much discussed in multiple contexts and venues at the COP, arguably more than previous COPs, so to say, given that without a functioning UN mechanism, the VCM was and still is the main place for international carbon credit transactions. So with that said, the VCM garnered significant attention during COP28, starting with the joint efforts by the 6 independent standards, namely VERA, Gold Standard, ACR, Climate Action Registry, Global Carbon Councils, and also the RED plus ART, on unifying principles for quantifying and accounting for removals and also emission reductions. And also the US Commodity Futures Trading Commission proposed guidance to boost standardizations, transparency, and also liquidity in the VCM by listing voluntary carbon credit derivatives. In addition to that, 7 EU countries, including the Netherlands, Germany, France, Spain, Finland, Belgium, and Austria, issued a framework tackling greenwashing and corporate claims for voluntary credit purchases, which distinguish between contribution versus offsetting claims, with the latter requiring corresponding adjustments. Next slide, please. So what are the implications? First of all, we just want to highlight that it's been 8 years after the Paris Agreement, yet we still don't have a global carbon credit trading mechanism in place. So with both, with both methodology and removal tax being a crucial preconditions for operationalizations, this leaves government basically with a standardized infrastructure or procedures when it comes to transaction between countries, if we talk about Article 6.2, and it also halts progress towards a global credit trading mechanism when we talk about Article 6.4, which was intended to provide the infrastructure as well as high standard benchmark for international credit trading. So when it comes to the operationalizations, this year with the original plan, at least before COP, to have like the revision of CDM methodologies and also the examples of engineering and land-based removals. Thus, those plans were no longer applicable. So there will be no Article 6.4 methodologies that can be developed, and also no new projects can be registered under the Article 6.4 mechanism. So what's next for Article 6.4? So at the last session in Dubai, we know that the CMA did not provide specific guidance related to Article 6.4, but did request the supervisory body to continue the relevant work to operationalize the mechanism. So the supervisory body will have their first meeting by the end of this month, in which they will assess the Dubai outcomes. So as of now, we see that their mandate for the year is still a bit unclear. And meanwhile, at the same time, the processing over 1,300 transition requests from CDM activities to Article 6.4 is happening. So these are actually all projects that are using the CDM methodologies. So with that said, we see that the absence of guidance from Article 6.4 left global carbon trading in limbo, which at the moment leads to VCM becoming the only game for international accrediting market, question mark. So because with no infrastructure having been established within Article 6.4, VCM this year can fill the void in the international market where the infrastructure, for example, registry standards and methodologies is not available. For example, Singapore's international carbon credits under its carbon tax regime published this eligibility list right after COP last year, in which it lists methodologies under gold standard, Vera, ACR, and also the GCC, sorry, the Global Carbon Council. So now we want to have a poll on this. So yeah, this is actually the thing that we want to ask. So with the non-decision under Article 6.4, does that affect your company's participation in the VCM or not? So maybe I can just give a few seconds and then we can see the answer. Okay. So next, now we comes to the outlook part. So one of the things that we see one of the things that we see on the 2034 is that the convergence on what constitute high quality credits. So the first one, we have CCP label credits, which we will explain further in the next slide. And then the second being alignment with CORSIA, which, yeah, as Stephanie mentioned before, emission reduction program for the global aviation sector set by the ICAO. And next one being having letter of authorization from host countries. So authorized units basically are from projects in countries willing to forego credits for the amount of mitigation the project achieves toward its national climate target under the Paris Agreement. So allowing the buyer to claim it has truly offset its emissions. So we see that those authorized credits will be more expensive than the non-authorized credits, given what the host or like seller countries have to sacrifice. And the reason being is because as corporates face greenwashing acquisitions, we see that corporates might seek correspondingly adjusted or like authorized credits to mitigate the risk of double claiming, although this is not endorsed by the VCMI. And the next one is the credits acceptance for from countries compliance scheme. So this is one of the trend that we see in 2020 that we see will happen in 2024. We see that independent standards trying to enter the compliance space with attempt to use independent standards such as Vera, Gold Standard, ACR, and CAR to achieve either NDCs or CORSIA are evident with buyer countries, incorporating VCM standards. One of the examples being the previously mentioned example for Singapore, and also the recently announcement from the Chile government about Chilean carbon market recognizing Vera certified projects. Next slide, please. So now when it comes to the CCP, the core carbon principle by the Integrity Council, at the moment, few weeks ago, the Integrity Council announced that they're going to assess more than 100 active carbon credit methodologies, while also doing the program level assessments with 6 standards already applied. And then this assessment will have they have like 3 categories assessment. The first one being internal assessments consisting of 10 categories, mainly from chemical processes, and the second one is credits that's going to be assessed outside the ICVCM, the multi-stake. So it's going to be assessed by the multi-stakeholder working group, who are going to assess more than 20 categories, including the RED+, renewable energy, coke stoves, and the last category, meaning the deprioritized category, so to say, as they are unlikely to meet the criteria set by the Integrity Council. So this includes categories such as new natural gas power, waste heat recovery, and energy efficiency. So with that said, if we just have a look at the charts on the left side, here we have like credits in circulation. We're looking at the credits in circulation based on our database. When we look at the number of credits that has been issued, but not yet retired and canceled, because we assume that once CCP credits become available, companies would want to procure CCP credits. So while we do see that there's going to be a natural lag in this kind of process, but we see that for companies wanting to make the VCMI claim because it's mentioned that within the VCMI claim code of practice, once the CCP credits become available, as per the VCMI criteria, using CORSIA eligible credits would no longer be applicable. And though CCP do not put a limit on vintage year, we expect that the preference towards newer vintages will continue, hence putting pressure on what already would be a supply constrained market. As we can see from the chart there, like most of the credits that has not been retired or credits under circulation falls under the multi-stakeholder working group criteria. Meanwhile, credits that falls under the internal assessment, mainly the chemical process, only accounts for 8% of credits in circulation. So with this, based on this, we do think that there will be a potential shortfall of supply, especially during the initial CCP era, which very much depends on how long the multi-stakeholder working group will be able to come up on decisions on this 20 plus categories. And we also expect to see the same trajectory with the CORSIA eligible credits as well as authorized credits to have like the shortfall of supply mostly due to the lengthy authorization process, which could lead to a supply bottleneck. Next slide. So this other trends, so in addition to the convergence of on what constitute high quality credits, other trends that we see that we foresee to happen in 2034 is that trends and preference we observed from buyers, so the buyer behaviors. So we expect to see the insetting or offtake agreements from companies deciding to invest in projects from the very early stage instead of resorting to market intermediaries to continue, which is aligned with the whole shift that we see from the carbon neutral to the contribution claims in 2023, and which also driven by another major development, so to say, which is the removal trends that is also happening in 2023. So it's not only for the reforestation projects, but also the technology-based removals that constitute high quality credits. And lastly, overall, we see that companies are divided into 2 categories. The first one being those willing to pay higher for near vintages, co-benefits, insufficient technologies, and the second one being the ones who still just want to pay for the cheapest price. I mean, some companies can be both. That is usually the case when they have a very high number of carbon credits that they need to purchase and cannot afford to buy exclusively highest quality. And the last trend that we think will happen more in 2024 is that the rise of domestic carbon market framework. This is something that we see in 2023 already. Starting in 2023, the increasing domestic governance of the credit market, especially from host countries such as Zimbabwe, Kenya, and Indonesia, happening in 2022. This shows intention to control the nation's carbon credit trade and reflects how geopolitical dynamics affecting the VCM. And now also it's time for another poll for the VCM. So as you can see from our last slide, we do see one of the main trends that we think will happen in 2034 is this convergence of what considered high quality credits. So here we want to know your opinion. What do you see as the most influential factors for high quality carbon credits going forward? So yeah, you can rank it order of significance as a price driver, with 1 being most significant and 4 being the least significant. And yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, I think we have another poll as well about this shift from the ton per ton approach to the contribution claims that we just pointed out as being the buyer's behavior, poll 1. So yeah, but to what extent do your purchase offsets your emissions? If you're more ton per ton approach to offset your company emissions in your accounting for GHG, or if you characterize your offset purchases as contributions toward climate claims mitigation. And now, I think as I pointed out in the beginning, we are going to share the recording of this session and also this presentation. And I think now we're open for questions. I think we already have some questions here. And the Q&A. I think we have an anonymous person asking if for forward deliveries, carbon credits are traded on OTC platforms. I think this is an easy question that we can answer, that they are traded on exchange platforms. Yeah. Another question is that where do you see European BECCS projects price? What will be price anchors for those carbon dioxide removals? Do you want to take this one, Fitri, or should I?
I think you can take the one, for removables.
Yeah. We do currently see the prices of removals being around 100 euros per ton, more or less, for different technologies. And we had the carbon removal certification framework that is going to the end session of the trilogues in the European Commission coming out next month in March. And we expect that to have a huge impact on BECCS prices, because on the whole discussions, whether they should or not include biochar as well. And I think we will have to come back to that when we have the final version and the decision of the CRCF on that. We also have another question here. What about some of the boutique carbon credit programs, such as Puro? How do you see their role next to the bigger names, Vera, who announced their collaboration at COP28?
Yeah.
Do you want to take this one, Fitri?
Yeah, I can take that one. So with regards to the role of Puro, wait, I'm not mute, right? Yeah. With regards to the role of Puro Earth, we see that with Puro being this registry for high durable removals, mainly for high durable removals, and again with the absence of Article 6.4 mechanism with that market participants are not able or will not have new methodologies under Article 6.4. We see that Pure Earth will, registries or like entities such as Pure Earth will continue to become this testing ground, so to say, for high durable removal credits, especially since Pure is also the one, at least until last week, the one and only removal registries that has been endorsed by the ECROA. So that's the role that we see for Pure Earth right now.
And another question from Patty. Why do you see a shortfall of CCP? 20 million credits retired in January already, and 2023 retirement was about 155 millions. So to meet same demand this year, some 130 million CCP credits will need to appear, but that does not take into account the number of credits that will retired between over the next few months. In short, how many million credits do you think will appear with CCP label before the year end?
Yeah, thank you for the questions. I think when it comes to like how many CCP credits that will be available this year, it would, based on our view, it would be very much depends on how fast the multi-stakeholder working group can come up with decisions, even with just a fraction of the categories, so to say, because we do know that the categories under the multi-stakeholder working group are like a bit more difficult categories, so to say, that are a bit more complex and require a bit more time to assess. Meanwhile, the ones under the internal assessments is a bit more easier to assess categories. But then again, based on the numbers of credits under circulations, we do know that even when we assume that all of the credits under the internal assessment will have a CCP labeled, which is a bit unlikely, I would say. And also even with the CCP do not put a limit towards vintages, but we do see that the preferences towards near vintages from buyers will continue, hence the potential short of supply. However, unfortunately, when it comes to the exact numbers of CCP label credits that will come this year, it would very much depends on whether or not the multi-stakeholder working group can come up with a decision this year, because that's in our opinion is the most affecting factors.
Thank you, Fitri. Thank you everyone for joining the webinar. I think we are approaching our time here. And I think we still have some questions, but we are available per email as well to answer any remaining questions you might have. Also, in the end of this presentation, we have all the contacts from Fitri and me, our LinkedIn profiles and everything. So feel free to reach out to us. And thank you once again for joining the webinar.